Will, welcome to the On the Pine Sports Network, mate. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
Joining us all the way from over there in New York. You're the host of the Fourth Man podcast and Big Three News. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you do there?
Yeah, so basically, I have a very, I would say, unique perspective on the sport of basketball. In the United States, obviously the big leagues is the NBA, especially with basketball. But recently, there's a new league that started. It was founded by Ice Cube, who's the rapper, and a couple Hollywood figures. And basically, it's a professional 3v3 league targeting. It was originally targeting retired NBA players, and it's since branched out to more international talent. I'm going to expect we're going to see a couple of NBL guys in the near future. So I think it's really exciting that I have the opportunity to come on and speak to your audience now. And really, we're the first people to really cover this on a daily basis, and we've grown tremendously since the league started in 2017. So, the Fourth Man is my podcast, and Big Three News is really the content pages that we have. And, it's given me a unique perspective on basketball. I've gotten the opportunity to speak with a lot of interesting and meet a lot of cool folks just like yourselves. And, it's been a fun ride.
Do you think the Big Three sort of it's jumped a level and become, because I think when it was focused on retired players, it might not have had that legitimacy in terms of the seriousness of it sometimes, but now that there's players coming from the NBL and players from Australia and all over, that it's almost like a new pathway to maybe get to the NBA or G League or that kind of thing. Do you think it's taken that next step to become really legitimate as a pathway to a professional career?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, the biggest, most important step is you want to have a guy who, returns to the NBA and is in the spotlight, coming from the Big Three. We had Joe Johnson, who won MVP in 2019, and he got a preseason invite with the Detroit Pistons, and he was eventually cut in favor of Christian Wood, which hindsight 2020, I don't think anyone can disagree with that move. You see the player that he is now. Xavier Silas actually played some playoff minutes with the Celtics a couple of years back. He was in the Big Three. And Jeremy Pargo was the most recent. He was with the Golden State Warriors last season, and he had a, role in the – so I was really interested to see him get a shot. But honestly, I agree with you. I think that's the place where we're heading. I think it's going to be another pathway like the NBL, like the G League, like overseas, like China. It's just going to be another opportunity for maybe guys who are overlooked for whatever reason, or maybe guys who had a chance in the NBA and didn't fully take advantage of that opportunity. It's an opportunity for them to get back to the NBA.
Have you always followed before the Big Three, were you a big basketball fan, or has that just come about from the Big Three?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, I like to describe it as, the Big Three really, I think it's like a love letter to basketball, right? So for me, there's definitely folks that I've met throughout my opportunities and everything with Big Three News that say they don't watch the NBA and they only watch the Big Three because, it's a much more physical brand. There's hand checking, there's no, touch fouls. It's not really dependent on the three. So a lot of, I'd say, old timers definitely like the Big Three for reasons like that, because it's more of like a 90s, 80s style. For me, I love basketball. I'm a hoops fanatic, whether it's, WNBA, NBL. I will say I'm a very casual fan of NBL compared to you two gentlemen. So I don't want to, make it seem like I'm on your level of knowledge, but, I absolutely love basketball, whether I'm playing it, watching it, watching film. It's absolutely an obsession of mine.
What about, I like that you mentioned that it's a bit rougher and more for the old style, because I've watched a bit of the Big Three, and Gary Payton, I'm not sure if he's coaching at the moment, but when he was coaching, I've never seen a coach as animated or as pissed off as he was just as he played. And can you tell us, is he still coaching, and has he cooled down at all?
Yeah, so Gary Payton is still coaching. So as of right now, he's coaching Three-Headed Monsters, which is probably credit to him. They're one of the only teams that's made the playoffs every single season. I mean, he's coaching MVP and Rashard Lewis that first year. He has guys like Reggie Evans, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. They the more successful teams. They just haven't captured that championship yet, so they kind of get a little bit overlooked, but they're in the conversation every year. As far as cooling down, I don't think there's ever a chance, like Gary Payton isn't going to attack somebody or, start trash talking. Either I've heard players say that they love it, I've heard players take a serious issue with it. but that's who Gary Payton is, and I think we love him for it.
And what about, I have seen there's a viral video that seems to pop up on my Instagram every now and then and keep coming back. A reporter asking Steven Jackson a few years ago if Kobe Bryant could have hacked it in the league before he passed away. How funny is that question, considering how tough and amazing Kobe was, and how dominant do you reckon he would have been in the Big Three if he had gone and played?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it's such a terrible, tragic situation because, in all honesty, if you talk to guys in that league, they were adamant that Kobe was joining at some point. A couple weeks before his passing, he actually got in contact with Nancy Lieberman, who's the head coach of Power, and at the time, I believe, was the defending champions. And Kobe basically was like, listen, you played in the WNBA when you were 50. What was your regimen like? What were you eating? What was your exercises like? What were you stretching? How much sleep were you getting? And Nancy Lieberman basically was like, well, why are you curious? Why are you asking me all these questions? And, he kind of was like, well, I'm kind of interested in following a similar path. So whether it was the NBA, he was reaching out to Big Three guys asking, what's the best opportunity for, to play at an extended longer age. So I think really the pieces were coming together. And I honestly, to answer your question, he would have been absolutely dominant. He would have been so dominant. As somebody who really was rooting for the league's success, I wondered if it was really the best thing in the world for him to be on that, because I wondered, would he be too dominant? Would he take the spotlight away from what the league was trying to do? And was it really just going to become like, whose ass is Kobe going to kick this week? So, in hindsight, you absolutely would have loved him in the league. And, he would have just absolutely been dominant. I mean, we saw what Joe Johnson did. And, you compare Joe Johnson to a player like Kobe Bryant, I can only imagine what Kobe Bryant would have done.
And if you could put together a Big Three lineup based on current NBA players, who would be in your team?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a fantastic question. We're talking about like prime guys, or we're talking about guys in the NBA who I feel are like Big Three candidates.
So like the guys, yeah, right. Well, like prime NBA players, but if you could pick your ultimate like Big Three team based on the type of, I guess, players and personalities that would fit it the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. I would say, for the history of the Big Three, really, it's been a league all about size, right? We see the NBA, and they're really going small ball, and it's all just agility and passing. It's like a track meet out there. But the Big Three has almost gone in the opposite direction, where, like, the bigger teams won. Like, in 2017, Trilogy went 10-0. They kicked everybody's asses, and they won the whole thing. They didn't have a single guard on the team. I think the smallest guy was, like, Kenyon Martin, which was absolutely ridiculous. So, be it as it may, I would say, a guy like Jokic, someone that can go in the paint, but also has the passing skills as a point guard. That's somebody that I think would do incredible in a half-court 3v3 setting. Who else? I mean, for shooting, honestly, someone like Klay Thompson.
Yep.
Because someone who can lock you down and also can hit a shot at any given moment. Klay's brother actually played in the league last year, and he played with Glenn Davis. So that's sort of like a developing story that's happening right now, because they're like taking shots at each other on Instagram.
I've seen that this morning.
Yeah, and like I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my god, like his brother was just teammates with Glenn Davis. So I would say Jokic, and then for my last guy, you probably want to go with a wing. So I'm going to say somebody. I mean, it's almost like an unfair answer, but somebody like a Durant. Somebody who is just so tall, can score at any given moment. I would say those are probably three of the top guys that are most suited for the Big Three game.
I like that you mentioned that it's almost a game dominated by bigs, because as we're going to talk about in a little bit, our all NBA teams to this point of the season, it was so hard to pick between Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid to start at the center position in the first team, and you'd think they've both been so good. Let's just put them both in. I mean, with the current NBA, it's positionless, really. Why don't we just have two centers? They can both shoot the ball relatively well from the perimeter. They can stretch the floor, so it would fit well. A Big Three situation, would those two fit well together, do you think? Is that something that would dominate in the Big Three?
Yeah. I mean, it's actually really funny. So my probably favorite team of all time was the Power team in 2018 that was coached by Nancy Lieberman. And what they did is they employed an interesting system where they basically ran two centers. So they ran Glenn Davis and they also ran Chris Anderson, and they basically just had them both situated at opposite sides of the paint. And then they would just be feeding Cuttino Mobley, who would keep on just backdoor cutting and like slashing and things like that. And that worked extremely well. And especially look at Jokic, the way that Jokic can, handle the ball and shoot, absolutely. He doesn't have to take up the paint. He wouldn't really be, stepping on Embiid's shoes. So, absolutely for sure, that would definitely work. That would dominate. I mean, Embiid and Jokic, oh my God, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, I like that. I just think that it would work, and I don't like that you can't have them in the same team, because I think it would actually be a team that would fit well. Talking about all NBA teams, Will, have you had to think about, if you were to pick it to this point of the season, who you'd have in your first team, second team, and third team? Because it's pretty stacked at the moment, and there's some guys, especially for me and Melrose, missing out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the really fun thing about this season is that I feel like for the last couple seasons, and especially when we were with the Warriors, like people were just running away with it. Like you kind of knew who MVP was going to be, like, come the second month of the season. But now I feel like, you talk about these major awards and the first teams, I feel like it's going to depend on how guys do down the stretch. Mm-hmm. If for first team, I'm looking at, for the guards, I feel like you got to look at, probably Curry as your point guard. I mean, just the way that he's been able to come back, and, Golden State really is only in the playoff conversation because of what he's been doing. For the other guard too, I think you just have to give it to Bradley Beal, but I think you could do another conversation. You could say, well, hang on a second. What about Donovan Mitchell? Because Donovan Mitchell, is leading the Jazz, which nobody expected the Jazz to be as good as they are. And that's a West with, the Lakers, the Clippers, and all of these, incredible teams that were going to be quote unquote locks for the finals, Western Conference Finals. And then the Jazz are playing out of their minds. So, right now I'm always very biased towards team success. Yep. I'm not really a big fan of, giving the guy on the barely playoff team, the MVP or any special honors just because he put up all the minutes, he played all the minutes and the ball was in his hands every time. So I'm probably going to go Donovan Mitchell over Bradley Beal at the moment. And then for my small forwards, I think it's the same small forwards that it's been for the last decade. I think it's LeBron and KD. Yeah. I've absolutely loved seeing Kevin Durant return. I don't think I realized how much I missed him. Just absolutely seeing the way that he's been playing. And then for center, center, it's just sort of in the same logic as picking Mitchell. I think I have to pick Embiid just because of the way the Sixers have been playing. I mean, if you're an Eastern Conference fan, you got to be worried about them. I mean, they are a threat. Mm-hmm. And, so that would be my first team. Second team, I'm trying to think, second team would really be, point guard maybe like Dame,
Yeah,
I feel like Dame is like,
we both had Dame as well.
I don't know what it is about Dame. Dame's incredible. Don't get me wrong. He's incredible individual. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. We're back.
I'm sorry. I didn't know if I broke up there for a second.
No, you're sweet.
Okay, cool. Just let me know. Just feel free to interrupt me if I break up. But
you're good.
Okay. I think I gotta give it to Dame too, and then you probably gotta put Beal there. If he's not first team, he's second team. And then as far as the forwards, I do with Luka. I never know if Luka's a point guard or a small forward. I feel
there's a positionless argument. There it is.
I don't know. Yeah. So I guess I would say Luka, and then for another forward, that's a tough one. Maybe like an Anthony Davis, and then I'm trying to think, or maybe even like Giannis. Giannis isn't even having that bad of a season, but he's gotten to that point where like it's expected of him. So like we're kind of just like, oh yeah, good for him.
the NBA media, Giannis could be putting up the exact same stats as these last 2 years, but it's almost like we're bored of what he's doing. Yeah. It's like you're either getting better and then we're going to be more impressed, or you're staying as you are and we're kind of bored of what you're doing.
Well, the person who got the worst of that was Westbrook, who averaged a triple-double, and then they gave him the MVP because he averaged a triple-double, and then he did that 3 more years in a row. Everyone was like, So what?
I think they realized the first one was a bit of a fuck up.
If it's the first one was all narrative. They already decided. As long as Westbrook didn't go out there and just, completely poop in his pants, they were giving that man MVP, regardless. And then
I wanted to mention to you, so
yeah, sure.
I think so. Melrose he's a big Jokic fan because of the passing ability and the way he fills the stat sheet. I was with you. I went Embiid, completely splitting hairs. It's such a hard topic to pick at the moment. A guy I wanted to talk about. So my second team, I had Dame, as you mentioned. I had PG at the 3, Giannis and Jokic, and I had Jaylen Brown at the 2. Have you been able to watch much of Jaylen Brown this season?
Yeah, Jaylen Brown really, it's funny. I always said to myself, I know Jaylen Brown's good, but I don't know what Jaylen Brown's good at. He's such he's such an all-around good player. And he's good, good. We watch him with the eye test, but is he a shooter? Is he a defender? I don't know, but he's really come into his own. And this season, the Celtics are. It's an interesting roster that they have. Those guys need to do well, right? Because they're capped out with Kemba and Jalen and Tatum, and you're gonna have to pay Smart, or I believe they already did pay Smart. So you come to a point where those are your guys. So it's gonna be very interesting to see come playoff time, because Tatum, Brown, they're all gonna have to step up. But for right now, the two of them, Brown and Tatum, they're looking very good.
Don't you think a guy like Brown? He could get his points. He was putting up 20 points a game last year, but he was sort of like you were saying, you sort of just didn't know what he was yet. He could have streaky nights where he'd shoot the ball really well, and then other nights where he's just throwing up bricks and air balls. Was he a playmaker? You weren't really sure, but this season he's been able to sort of complete his game and shoot the ball at a really high clip, which I think takes guys over the top for me. So, if I'm comparing guys, especially for an article like this, I want to be making sure that they're playing efficiently and be able to shoot the ball, because, it's so easy to be a Westbrook and just throw up shit and still get your stats because of volume. But when you're able to make the most of, not limited opportunity, but, you've got to,
for sure.
You got to keep tabs on how many, shots you're putting up, and that's what Jaylen Brown's doing at the moment.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially when you're in a system like what Brad Stevens has them running. I mean, exactly what you just said. You're going to get a limited number of shots. So there's going to be points where the ball's coming to you. You're probably going to be open because we just called this play. You just got to make the shot. And so when a guy, succeeds and excels and stands out in a system like that, when he's surrounded by guys who, if he's not making the shot, someone's going to be like, I'm taking the ball from you and I'm going to go make the shot. That's an excellent point. You have to give him almost, bonus points for that.
Now, Will, I want to see what you think about Melrose's third team center, Andre Drummond. Actually, I'll give Melrose a chance to explain first. So let's just see what he's, because I'm not. Okay. I don't like it, but I'm going to see what he says.
Oh, okay. So this is stemmed from me being a Cavs fan. So
okay.
I'm looking at what he's doing right now this season. And if Cleveland didn't have him, and probably Sexton as well, but he's missed a number of games. If we didn't have Drummond, we probably wouldn't have won as many games as we have. So I'm looking at what he's doing from a team perspective, but also his averages are pretty good. They're, double digits for rebounds and points, which he's always really done. But I don't know. I just feel like he's playing out of his skin. He's in the right team. I don't think he'll probably finish as the center. You'd probably give it, if I had my time again, I'd probably say Anthony Davis. But as a Cavs fan, you see what he's doing, and I'm sort of like, well, he deserves a mention.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very fair. The only thing I would say, as a Cavs fan, as someone who's clearly fond of Drummond, do you think he's going to be on the Cavs for much longer?
Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah.
Well, does anyone want him? That's another question. Is he not going to trade for him?
I don't know. I heard he wants Brooklyn. That's what I heard. But I don't know how he gets there without a buyout. Yeah. That's a lot of money to buy out. That's a lot of money just to give him.
Yeah. So the rumors of JaVale McGee getting to Brooklyn make more sense to me, purely from a defensive standpoint. Brooklyn, they just don't need any other scorers whatsoever. Right. They just need a semi-half decent defender that can make up for Harden and Kyrie's missed assignments out in the perimeter, I think.
Yeah.
Now, Will, I want to move on to some of the awards because while some of the awards are pretty universally agreed upon, there's definitely a few that are wide open at the moment. Let's start with most improved because Liam and I went with different. I took Christian Wood and Liam went with Jeremiah Grant from Detroit. Who are you thinking for most improved?
You know, with the way that the Rockets have been playing post the Harden trade, I think it's got to be Wood at the moment, right? I mean, he just almost – it was funny because normally when everyone says a guy's about to explode, normally he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And Wood was the opposite. Everyone was like, oh, we got to pick up Wood because Wood's going to be fantastic this season. And that was just like, you know, NBA Twitter talk. And then he actually went out and did it. So he's been really good. I will say this, though, and I think, Ollie, you'll like this one. I think that if Jared Allen wasn't coming off the bench for the part of the season, I think Jared Allen has a serious, case to make for it. I mean, when he was starting in Brooklyn, he was phenomenal. And when he's playing on Cleveland, he's phenomenal. I believe he had a dominant night tonight against Ed Davis and the Timberwolves. So, but right now I think it's got to be Christian Wood.
There's a funny story about that, Melrose, about Jared Allen.
Well, but just before you continue, though, he had 23 and 18
today,
as Will said. So it's almost like if we give up, and Drummond didn't play. So it's like we get rid of Drummond. Well,
you're just getting the same thing in Jared Allen.
Drummond the second.
So little story time from Ollie. Oh. So over in the States, we're in Brooklyn and New York and holidaying and go to a Brooklyn game. And my mum doesn't really know much about basketball. Doesn't follow it much. I'll talk to her a bit about it. She knows what's going on. She knows who LeBron is. Yeah. She knows who Steph is. And so she goes up to the store. Jared Allen's a rookie and buys a Jared Allen T-shirt. I've never heard of him at this point. This is early in his rookie year. Said, "Oh, Mum, he's got the big afro. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be any good. Maybe he'll be gone in a couple of years." Fast forward, and he's a vital part of Brooklyn. And then all of a sudden he's traded. So Mum's a bit flat that he's left. It's her favorite T-shirt.
That's it. But you can't wear it now.
Wears it out walking the dogs.
Oh,
all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's a throwback. It's a throwback. Now it's style. Right?
Now it might be worth some money. It's a vintage kit. It's a vintage kit.
It's vintage, exactly.
But, so back to Christian Wood. So, I mean, it's just sort of, I think you've seen how much he's grown this year. And even like for me, taking a punt on him on the weekend and putting a bet on, having him to have 20 and 10, and he starts off really slow, doesn't play many minutes in the first quarter and doesn't score one rebound. Then all of a sudden the second quarter explodes, gets his touches, he's active again, and all of a sudden he's got 12 and 5 at halftime. So, you can sort of see even when he's having a bad game, he's really able to jump back on and not lose focus sort of thing, which is hard, I think, for these young guys, especially when they've started off so well and then they have that sort of first little glimpse of adversity.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'll tell you what, I mean, you got to give credit to the Rockets, right? Well, let me say this, by the way. It's funny that you brought up your mom and not really knowing basketball because I was watching the Nets game and the Nets were playing the Hawks, and my mom walks in and they're in Atlanta, and my mom goes, "Why is the Chick-fil-A logo in the middle of the court?" And it's like the Atlanta Hawks. And I was like, "Oh, it's not Chick-fil-A, but it's close." But you got to give credit to the Rockets, right? Because Steven Silas comes in, right? And really everyone thought that it was really like rebuild time, right? Like Houston's a dumpster fire, right? We all saw like the clutch point memes and everyone was making fun of the Rockets. But they're playing good. I mean, they remind me of the Thunder last year, right? Like it almost seems wherever Westbrook leaves, all of a sudden it gets much better.
I think hasn't that been sort of a regular occurrence throughout his career? Everyone that's left him seems to go really well.
But no, you're right. I mean, Christian Wood, credit the system that he's in, and credit guys like John Wall and Victor Oladipo who have sort of, maybe been, and even Boogie Cousins too, right? Who have maybe been the guy at some point in their careers, but they're willing to take a little bit of a back seat and let the kids sort of, work through it and, put up the numbers. So, the Rockets have a good thing going right now. And I think maybe even a month ago, we couldn't have said that. So I think Christian Wood's a big part of that.
I want to see what you both reckon, because when the Westbrook and Westbrook and John Wall trade went down, I sort of looked at it in terms of if you're Washington, and while Westbrook provided possibly a higher ceiling, how low they could go was really low compared to John Wall. I felt like John Wall, John Wall you're getting here. Westbrook you can get, right up there, but, Westbrook can be down there as well. And I think that to this point of the season, that's what's been proven, that Wall has been that steady ship for Houston, running the point, just running the floor really well. And Westbrook's just been injured, not playing, up and down. There's COVID stuff going on everywhere. It's obviously not his fault, but, it's just not steady enough. And while the highs of, say, the Brooklyn game the other night are there, that sort of just bottom point where, you're going to be there consistently isn't quite there. Do you see that, Mo? Like, what was your thoughts on the trade when it happened?
Like the Harden to the Nets?
No, the Westbrook and Wall trade.
Okay, yeah. No, I get where you're coming from. I sort of thought like that's a massive win for Washington, but it obviously sort of is flipped the other way. I think like looking at Houston now, they look a lot more balanced, and since they've got rid of James Harden, it just looks like the team looks more upbeat. I feel like with Harden, it was more of a negative vibe. I mean, I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but just out on the court, the team looks a lot more, I don't know, like confident as a group, but more willing to, like, they can put up shots and it's okay. We don't have to go through James Harden every possession. So,
what are your thoughts on it, Will?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to agree. I think, we heard stuff how, like, Harden was basically running that organization. I got to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of Daryl Morey, for several reasons. And I think one of them was, I think the way that he let Harden basically run that organization, and how he basically was just like, all right, Harden wants to play with Chris Paul. All right, I'm going to mortgage everything for Chris Paul, and I'm not going to sign anybody over 6'5", right? And I don't believe in the center position. So, I think when Daryl Morey left, I think, and they got the new owner. And so I think the boot came down a little bit. And I think Harden didn't like it because he was used to being a certain way. And so, I think he was like, all right, I'm bailing Chip. I don't want to be here. And then for a lot of those guys, they were in Houston before. Maybe you have Eric Gordon and maybe you have PJ Tucker. But other than that, the John Walls, the Oladipo's, the Christian Woods, they have no, base level of understanding what the Houston Rockets are and what that organization is like. I mean, none of them played for Morey or D'Antoni. So, I think it's a fresh start in a lot of ways for that organization.
I was going to say, I reckon that they'll have a better season now, getting rid of Harden, as opposed to if they kept him and kept that group they had.
It's so hard to play with a guy like that. Like, I think if we've all played sport, we've all been with someone that, is just flat, low energy. Obviously, just doesn't care as much as you, and it does bring the whole group down when you're playing. So, there's definitely a weight lifted off their shoulders, and to get guys back like a Wall and Oladipo or Cousins who are all willing to sacrifice and are really good guys, it seems, especially in the locker room, which is so important. Is pretty vital.
Well, yeah, I think like they're all past their prime, but like they're together. If they can stay healthy, who knows how far they can go.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially too, like you said, we've all been there playing with guys in low energy, and it's even more so when he's the best guy on the team. So when the guy bringing you down is the guy that you also have to at the same time be reliant on, it's a tough balancing act. So
and when he's asking for the ball all the time, you'd be like, get the fuck out. I'm not giving you the ball. You don't get the fuck. You're leaving. So I'm not giving you the touches.
110%.
I think this next award we're all going to agree on, Sixth Man of the Year. Jordan Clarkson. Is he your man, Will?
Ooh, that's a good one. Sixth Man of the Year. God.
I think in Australia that's pretty big.
It's not a usually the Sixth Man of the Year, I feel like there's sort of your couple candidates that are obvious, but this year I had to dig a bit. I had to sort of, it's not one that was jumping out to me, but then you look at the team success and his output, and Clarkson, he's the best scorer off the bench at the moment. And
it's often a scorer that it goes to as well.
Yeah, which, I mean, makes sense. Not always right, I don't think, but in terms of his impact and the way he's shooting the ball, especially from the 3-point line, is really impressive. Best of his career so far.
Yeah, and you know what? You're probably right. I mean, especially with the way Utah's playing, I feel like the six-man always normally goes to like the best bench player on the best team, or when they don't have someone, then it's Lou Williams.
Yeah.
Like by like default. I'll be 100% honest with you, six-man wasn't even like something that I'm looking at right now, but I mean, but absolutely. I mean, the way that Clarkson has been playing is right, and the way that Utah has sort of surged past everyone's expectations, I think he definitely deserves it.
And then you mentioned, Will, that you have watched a bit of the NBL in your time, not closely, but enough, I feel, that especially you would know that LaMelo Ball was here playing for Illawarra. Is he Rookie of the Year picked? Melrose picked him for Rookie of the Year. I went with Tyrese Halliburton. Who are you feeling like is Rookie of the Year to this point of the year?
Well, I got to give you a lot of credit for that Halliburton pick, because, I don't think a ton of people saw him coming.
No,
so
not at all.
So I think, he's definitely a good guy. I would say he's definitely like a buy low, sell high guy right now, Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, he's showing those flashes as a star. I would say right now his biggest negative is that he's on the Kings. So we know how guys who tend to succeed on the Kings go. And, even more so, you look at a guy like De'Aaron Fox, you're like, all right, now what do you do with him? You just paid him. You just drafted this point guard for some reason, and now what? What was the plan here? I feel like they didn't even expect Halliburton to be this good, but I think it's got to be LaMelo. Just the way that he's playing. I mean, I know he got his first start tonight against Miami. I wasn't able to check and see how he did, but I think it's got to be LaMelo. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Charlotte was one of those teams where nobody really cared about him. There was just sort of there, but he's brought an energy and sort of like a swag back to a Charlotte fan. Like if you're a Hornets fan, you're sort of walking with your chest puffed up a little bit. You got a little swag in your step walking down the street. So, I'd give it to LaMelo.
Well, when have you ever thought, I'll check what Charlotte's up to. I'll check them and see how their game is going. When was the last time you ever legitimately thought, I'm going to put the Hornets on?
Like Del Curry,
I was going to say, the reason I had him as well, though, is as we spoke about earlier with Westbrook, it's storylines. The NBA loves storylines.
Big time storyline.
So LaMelo Ball, I mean, he's putting up the numbers and then there's the story. So yeah. I've got him as a lock.
Going back to Halliburton really quick, don't you just feel sorry for guys that get drafted to the Kings or Minnesota? You're like, man, you're just going to waste the first 8 years of your career. Minnesota are the most incompetent franchise I think I've seen in sports history. They are embarrassing. The Kings are very close behind them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you do. I mean,
in there too.
Yeah, I mean, which is so funny, right? Because one of the funniest things I saw was so this Michael Jordan documentary comes out, right? And it's 10 hours of basically saying how Michael Jordan will stop at nothing at being successful and being the best. And then I remember after it ended, one of my friends was like, so what the hell happened with the Hornets then? Did he just give up then? Where's this mentality?
He just thought that paying Gordon Hayward $120 million was going to get him that championship, which he's been good, but that's a lot of cash. Yeah. It's a lot of cash, MJ.
He's been good, but that's I don't get it. I didn't get the Batum. I didn't get I didn't get a lot. But I'll tell you guys what, one of my favorite athletes of all time, which is an NFL quarterback, Eli Manning. He's absolutely one of my favorites, and he's maybe one of the most famous things he ever did was just he got drafted by the San Diego Chargers and he just refused to play for them. He was like, yeah, you're trading me to the Giants or I'm not showing up. So, at the time everyone was like, oh, how could you or whatever. But I got to be honest with you. I mean, if I'm this NBA guy, and especially if I'm a guy like LaMelo, who I was making it to the NBA since I was in 8th grade, if I get my number called and it's Minnesota or Sacramento, I might be like, oh, I don't know, because
LeVar was pretty clear. He didn't want him to go to Minnesota. He was pretty happy with that on draft day. So, I feel for Anthony Edwards. If I was Anthony Edwards, I would be out of there quick. I'd be standing my ground and saying, I'm getting the fuck out of Minnesota.
I would have felt so bad for D'Angelo Russell too, right? The second Ball brother that boots you out of town, that takes your job as starting point guard.
And as well, isn't it really cold in Minnesota? Like, fuck that.
Oh, it's freezing. It's freezing.
Like, it's the team sucks and the place sucks.
There's
like
just nothing appetizing about playing for Minnesota.
At least New York, it's cold, but like it's New York. There's shit to do. Like there's you can go somewhere. Where are you going to Minnesota?
Right. Nowhere. You're going absolutely nowhere. I mean, I'll tell you, but that's a huge thing too, right? And I was having this conversation with my friends, and we were like, if you're a max player, everything equal, what team are you going to play for? And we all said Miami.
Oh yeah.
Like we were like 1, 2, 3 Miami. Why? Beautiful weather, no state income tax. It's a good number one. It's a well-run franchise, right? Pat Riley's there, Eric Spoelstra's there. I don't know why you would ever choose to play for a team that's like, I mean, even Toronto. I mean, we wonder why Kawhi left. He went to LA. Texas to Toronto, back to LA, and we're wondering why.
Yeah, I don't think you can blame him. I mean, I've been to LA; it's beautiful. Speaking of LA, Anthony Davis, is he your defensive player of the year pick?
I don't know, because the way that Utah is playing, and it might just be recency bias, but you got to give it to Gobert.
Yeah.
Okay.
I looked at Gobert. To me, it was Gobert or Anthony Davis, but I just feel like it's that Lakers sort of, as I was saying before, the NBA, they love their storylines, and I don't know, they go for the big market teams, and LA probably slightly a fair way ahead of Utah, but I think Anthony Davis probably gets it again.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about too a storyline for the NBA. I mean, they were ready to kick Rudy Gobert out of the league last season. After he was touching all the microphones and everything, and they were like, "Oh, great!" Like Rudy Gobert paused sports in America. Over billions of dollars they lost, and everyone just decided to turn Rudy Gobert. And
I can't wait for the documentary of that. Like 20 years down the line when Rudy Gobert paused the sports world in America.
But oh my God, but that was a crazy day too. But to go from that to defensive player of the year, and even when Donovan Mitchell was sort of talking like, I don't want this dude on my team anymore, and now the way that they're playing, and I mean, credit to Quinn Snyder too, he's an excellent coach. That's a storyline that I would watch if the Utah is legit. I know they just lost to Jokic after winning 10 games in a row. If they end up being legit, that's definitely going to be a storyline.
It is amazing they've been able to pull it together, especially after, not a great first few games of this year, but also when you think about back to the bubble and the whole thing with Rudy and Donovan Mitchell, like that's not an easy thing to come back from when, it's a life-altering thing, COVID, and, they experienced that to the max. So props to them. It's great to see. To finish off with the awards, MVP, I feel like the All-NBA center is they're our pick. So I've gone with Embiid and Melrose with Jokic. Who are you rocking with, Will?
I think right now it's probably Embiid. I saw that they released the odds. I think ESPN released the odds, and LeBron was number one, which to me, I feel like if you have LeBron number one, then you don't know who the MVP should be. I definitely don't think it's LeBron at this point in the season. I think it's going to end up which team is the best, right? Because really the way that – I don't know if there's a single team right now in the NBA really that is a lock to go into the finals. I mean, would anyone be shocked if the Clippers beat the Lakers in a series of 7? Or if, I'm trying to think, even if the Cavs end up playing Brooklyn, the way that they're playing, could that be like, a crazy upset? We don't know.
Don't get him excited. He's really nervous. Put the pressure on him.
But, honestly, I'm trying to think, I think right now it's Embiid just because of the way the Sixers are playing, but it could change. Paul George is having a sneaky MVP campaign. I mean, he's back to what he was in OKC. But, again, narrative, storylines, and people aren't prepared to talk about that yet. KD, if Brooklyn can pull together and Brooklyn can be the 1 seed, which I think is, probably the expectation of a team with Kyrie, Harden, and KD. KD is putting up numbers similar to what they were when he did win MVP. So right now, season ended today. What if the season ended today? Season ended today. I'd say it's Embiid just because the way that he's played, the way the Sixers have played. But honestly, I think it's going to come down the stretch. I don't think the MVP has been decided yet. I will say that.
I think back to Paul George. I'm glad you mentioned him because, and for the Clippers as a whole, they're just not being spoken about at the moment. At least I just feel like I haven't seen as much compared to last season at this point, especially, and how much was being spoken about the Clippers then and how they were tougher than the Lakers and, the dogs on their team and whatever. But compared to now, no one's speaking about them. They're having just as good a year. Kawhi and PG are really playing well. But no one's talking about it. So I think it's the perfect storm with the Clippers because there's just no coverage or pressure on them at the moment. So that they're going through these games relatively pressure-free, and hopefully, for their sake, hitting their stride come playoff time and actually making the Western Conference Finals for once.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like Kawhi and Paul George's contracts, I think they're both free agents after this year, right? I think the way that they did it. So this is really a make or break year. I mean, when you're Kawhi and you sign a deal to match up with Paul George, say you're both free agents at the same time, that's not just to be like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we both sign on the same day? No, that's like, if this isn't going right, we're both out of here. So this is really a make or break year for them. I think the Clippers are giving them any chance to succeed. Ty Lue has done a very good job so far. But I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how far they go in the playoffs. I mean, they might have the most riding on it because if they get booted, let's say by depending on the seeding, but let's say they face like a hot Warriors team or if maybe even Trailblazers too, or just a team like that, if what Dame has done to higher seeds before, if they're the victim to that, if Paul George is the victim to another Dame Lillard series-winning shot, I don't know what he does at that point, but I don't know if the Clippers can feel too confident that they're coming back.
Yeah, you're very right, Will. Well, Will, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us, mate, and taking the time. I'm sure we're gonna speak soon. So everyone jump on Big Three News and the Fourth Man podcast and listen to Will's work. And jump on the On the Pine website and check out mine and Melrose's awards and all NBA teams and compare with Will's, compare with yourselves. Will, thanks for joining us, mate. We'll chat soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope, I didn't bore you guys too much. So thank you. I hope to do this again soon.